session. Good morning, everyone. It's our pleasure to welcome you today to our workshop. I'm Dr. Yahya Isa, a consultant within the Research Intelligence Department of Elsevier. And the purpose or the objective of this workshop is to give an overview about the Scopus selection criteria to yourselves, the editors and editors-in-chief of the Egyptian journals. So it's again our pleasure to welcome you all. We ask you to mute yourself during this meeting just to avoid any background noise during the presentation. And if you may also switch off the video during the presentation just to avoid any interruptions if anyone has a weak internet connection. Of course, except if the presenter wants to keep on sharing their video, that's more than welcome to. So the presenters for today are Alexander Van Servelen. He is a senior consultant within the Research Intelligence Department for Elsevier. He is an expert about the Scopus selection criteria. He has delivered this workshop in many forms, many times around the globe. So we are very pleased to welcome here today with us as a presenter. And we also have Mr. Derek Doncombi, our marketing development manager for Elsevier. He has also participated many times in these workshops, and Mr. Alexander and Derek are really experts in the field, and we try to invite the best from Elsevier to provide you with the Scopus selection criteria for yourselves. So again, it's our pleasure to welcome them, and we thank them very much for joining us. In fact, it's afternoon in their time period. They are based in Singapore. So we thank them for taking the time from the day and joining us. And of course, we also have Madame Ola Lawrence, coordinator with the AKB and the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. And of course, also Madame Rabab Rashwan with us today. So Madame Rabab Rashwan will be the moderator for the session as well. And Madame Ola, if you would like, if I can hand over the microphone to you just to welcome the attendees, and then we can hand over and start with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Welcome for all of you. This is a session that we were waiting for it since long ago. That this is a new approach that EKB jointly with the Ministry and the Supreme Council of the University that we're working now on indexing, helping the journals to be indexed in Scopus, and this will be our target till the end of the year, till we have, so we can have more journals indexed, and definitely this will be having a good implication on the ranking, because definitely the citation will give a very high push to ranking. Thank you for everybody who is attending this session. Thank you, Dr. Yahya. Thank you, Mr. Alexander, Mr. Derek. Thank you for everything. And we will continue in these sessions, either sessions like this attended by several people, or jointly with Instinet and Mrs. Rabab. We will have one-to-one session in the future after planning our and scheduling sessions with the journals. I think that Dr. Hala, Supreme Council from the Supreme Council of the University, who is leading the evaluation of the journals, and she was very supportive to us in this issue. She wants to give a small talk to everybody and tell thank you for everybody. Thank you. Dr. Hala. Dr. Hala.
Hello, كده سامعني؟
يا دكتورة.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hope you are all safe and sound. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Hala Ali, a professor of clinical pathology at Cairo University, Faculty of Medicine, and I'm also the Assistant General Secretary of the Supreme Council of Universities in Egypt. I wish to thank each one of you, the representatives from Elsevier, Mr. Alexander Van Servelen, the Senior Consultant Research Intelligence, Mr. Derek Dancombi, the Marketing Development Manager, Madame Ola Lawrence, Consultant from EKB, Madame Rabab Rashwan, from the Academy of the Scientific Research and Technology. And all the Egyptian journal chief editors attending, for availing the time and making the effort to attend and participate in this Zoom workshop. The objective of this workshop is really very important and pivotal, and it is a cornerstone on the road that we started at the Supreme Council of Universities when we changed the rules for the promotion committee, and we decided that we evaluate the local journals at the Supreme Council of Universities in order to point out the points of weaknesses in these journals, to help them to improve these points. And this would be the second step in order to help them get indexed in all prestigious databases like Scopus or Web of Science. So our ambition at the Supreme Council of Universities was to improve research productivity, visibility, and integrity, and to have a good quality scientific journals. In order to do that, we are meeting today, and these journals attending today are the ones who completed all the criteria that were selected by the Supreme Council in order to say that this is a good quality journal. So all of you attending today, you achieved this target, and this was the first target. Our second target is to help you get indexed in Scopus. I would like to seize the opportunity to thank Ola Lawrence for helping us in the evaluation through the AKB, and to thank Mrs. Rabab Rashwan, who really had a great effort in doing this evaluation in the proper way we wanted, together with her gorgeous team. I'd like to thank them all, and I would like to thank all the chief editors of the journals who also did a great effort in order to improve the quality of their journals and to achieve all the points that we wanted them to achieve. Thank you all. I will now leave the floor to Alexander and to Derek to pave the road for you for indexing. And thank you, everybody. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, fantastic. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for the introductions, and interesting to hear about what you're doing there. I think that what we'll present today is based on 5 or 6 years of work that I've done with Derek in Southeast Asia. So we've worked quite closely with the governments and universities in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia to get more of their local content and journals indexed in Scopus. And I think during that period of working very closely with these governments, these universities, as well as the editors, we've learned a lot about this kind of process of improving journals, and how important it is to certain countries and universities and people to get more of their journals indexed in Scopus. But it's something that doesn't happen overnight, right? So I think that one of the good things about Scopus is that the process and criteria for how content is selected for Scopus is quite transparent, which means that we can talk about it in quite a bit of detail. But we also try to, in these presentations or in these workshops, try to make it a bit tangible in terms of what the criteria means, so that you can kind of get a practical understanding of it. So I will hope that at the end of these 2 hours, you will walk away with a bit more of a conceptual understanding and practical understanding of how the content is selected, and hopefully you could apply that to look at some of your own journals and decide to what degree you are ready to submit to Scopus, or to what degree you still need to improve on certain parts. Luckily, I'm not giving this presentation alone, so I need to present my desktop. Can you confirm that you can see the desktop? Or you can see my presentation?
Yes, there we can see it. Yeah, Alex.
Great. So I'll just start. And how much time should we finish this to do Q&A at the end?
We have the session should run until 12. So maybe we can leave half an hour at the end for questions. So I think if we finish the slides maximum by 11:30 and leave half an hour for questions and discussion.
All right, I'll do my best. Okay, so as I said, we're going to talk in detail about the content selection process and criteria. Roughly, this is what we'll cover. Introduction, we'll go through the process in terms of practically how it works. We'll look at each criteria and look at conceptually what it means, as well as practically what it means. We're going to look at some rejection letters, which I think is one of the best ways to learn about this process, is looking at what are some of the reasons given for rejection. If we have time, we'll look at what re-evaluation is, so that you understand that content is sometimes also removed from Scopus. Then we'll do the Q&A. I think that was already a great introduction about Derek and I, but we're both based in Singapore. Derek is a local. I'm actually from the Netherlands, but I've been working in Singapore since 2013. But you want to say hi, Derek?
Can you hear me? Just to confirm?
Yep.
Great. So just very briefly, first and foremost, good morning, distinguished guests. My name is Derek Duncombe, Marketing Development Manager, responsible for the research intelligence and corporate portfolios. And I'm, like Sandra said, I'm a Singaporean, full-fledged Singaporean. Prior to that, my primary focus was on Scopus, and was also responsible for conducting numerous Scopus journal editors workshops across Asia Pacific, having been involved with the Scopus Content Selection and Advisory Board, the CSAB, which we'll hear more about later, for several years. So we are presenting this workshop from our homes during this coronavirus pandemic. So please bear with us if you hear some ambient noises around us, okay? So, but I hope that everyone is keeping safe and healthy during this unprecedented times. Thank you. I know it's a bit long-winded, but yeah, hello.
Okay. So I'm very happy that I get to do this together with Derek. It's a lot more fun to do with two people than to do alone. And we certainly welcome your questions and thoughts at the end. As an introduction, you know what Scopus is. I'm not going to go over it, but it's a very comprehensive and curated data set, right? So it's a citation abstract database. We tried to find the sweet spot between being very comprehensive, so that we could, perhaps everyone could mute themselves to minimize the background noise. So we tried to find that sweet spot between comprehensiveness and being representative of many regions, but also upholding the quality, which means that it's not easy to get your journal into Scopus. Scopus covers journals from all the major publishers. Just 11% of the journals are Elsevier journals. 60% of the journals in Scopus come from smaller publishers, including University Press. We select content not based on who is the publisher or which university it comes from. It's really based on the journal meeting the quality criteria that we'll go through today. The coverage is roughly 24,000 serial journals. We have conference proceedings, books and book series from I think 105 different countries, 40 different languages. And we have almost 9 million open access papers in the database by now. Sorry, I always wrestle with my... If you look at the content by subject area, you can see that, for example, the journals has a lot less social sciences than health and physical sciences. But if you were to look at conferences, it's mostly physical sciences, while books would be mostly social sciences. So that's that breakdown. This morning I had a quick look to see the publication output of Egypt because I was curious. And I just picked a couple countries that I'm familiar with and threw in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. And you see that this red line is Egypt. So you've gone from maybe 3,000 publications per year in 2001 to almost, no, over 25,000 publications last year. So it's very strong growth. We support at Elsevier local journals by doing workshops like we're doing today. We've put some work into professionalizing them and trying to really demonstrate how we select the content and practically what each of the criteria means. But there's also a platform called Digital Commons, which is a very professional platform that can be used to manage the whole process of publishing journals, from peer review, home pages, through to the production part. So that's another way in which some journals are approaching improving their quality. As mentioned, we do many of these workshops. This is a picture of us with the Ministry of Education, the head of the ministry in Malaysia last year, back when it was still okay to see people in person. So we hope that's going to be okay again soon in future. Always get this problem with PowerPoint. So Scopus content is all selected based on evaluation by the Content Selection Advisory Board, the CSAB. And the CSAB are independent in the sense that they don't work for Elsevier. They're not on our pay list. They're not employees. And in that sense, they have a mandate to be independent and to only look at the quality of the journal based on their understanding of their field. So each one is a subject chair in a different field. And we cannot influence their decision. So if I say that, you know, I really think that this journal is a very good journal, that will not affect their decision. So they're really meant to be independent. They meet twice a year in person, but they are evaluating all year long. So ultimately, when you submit your journal, it's going to be one of these people that makes the decision. Depending on the subject of the journal is what determines which one of the people will make that decision. And Derek, you worked for quite a long time with the CSAB, didn't you?
Yep, almost 10 years.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of these photos that Derek's on there. But if you look at the submission statistics, a lot of journals that are reviewed are not accepted. And Derek, I see your initials at the bottom of this slide, so it's for you, sorry.
No worries. Okay, if you take a look at this particular slide, you can see it says that the top 30 countries. I'm just going to pick out 3 plus Egypt, okay? Just to highlight a couple of points here. So if you look at United Kingdom, you'll notice that it's very, okay, the orange bar that you see there is those journals that have been submitted and accepted into Scopus. The gray bars are those that are rejected, right? So if you look at United Kingdom, you will notice that a very high percentage, almost 80% of all journals that are submitted are accepted, right? That's the first example. The second one that I want to pick out is actually India. So if you look at just beside it, India submits a lot of journals, third highest number of submissions, but the rejection rate is very high. They've only got about maybe 12% accepted into Scopus. Okay. The third one I want to highlight is Singapore. Singapore, as you may know, I'm from Singapore. Singapore is a tiny country, very tiny country, less than 6 million people. Okay, and Sandra can vouch for that. It's a very small country. But if you look at where we are right now, Singapore here, though we are on the extreme right end, it's a very high percentage of acceptance. Okay, so we are punching above our weight. Now, let's look at Egypt. Egypt, at this point in time, it has about 43.6% acceptance rate, which is not too bad. Why I say not too bad? Because the world average is about 48% acceptance. Okay, so if you think about it, we're not too far off. So the whole point that I want to make from this particular illustration here is the fact that it is not the numbers. Just because you submit a lot of numbers like India, for example, almost 1,000 journals, but you get a very small percentage. The whole idea is if you know the criteria, then it'll be easier for you to actually submit and get it accepted. A higher chance for you. So what we're trying to do, Sandra and I, we're trying to increase your odds of getting yourself indexed in Scopus. Okay, increasing the odds. So what are the odds? Would you mind going to the next slide, Sandra? Okay, and next one. So I'm going to talk about the Scopus journal selection criteria. But before that, what I always like to start with is the back of it. As in like, what happens when you submit? Because a lot of times people are saying, okay, I submit and then I wait. How long do I need to wait? The next question. How long do I need to wait? 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? I don't know. So what has happened is that in order to be very transparent about the entire workflow, the entire process, what we've come up with is actually a chart, a workflow chart, just to give you an idea of what really goes on behind the scenes. So if I can just draw your attention here to this part, okay? So here it all begins with the title suggestion. Now, when we say for you to suggest a title, okay, or submit a title, it means the same thing. So what they need to do, they go into this particular URL down there, they click on the link and then they submit, they upload their journal, okay? And most of the time, before you can even ask me this question, let me answer you the question now. The question is it free to submit? Yes, it's free to submit, okay? It's free. So it all starts here. Now, who can submit? Next question, right? If you see here, there are 4 parts here. One, it says the publisher, or it could be the editor-in-chief, which most of you are, or the managing editor or chief editor. I mean, they go by different names in different parts of the world, but they all mean the same thing. Yeah, as in like, who's the one in charge, overall in charge of that particular journal. Or it could also be the editorial board member. The board decides, one member represents the board and submits. Or it could also be the librarian, the chief librarian, library director. Again, anyone from that, any of these 4 particular scenarios here, they can actually submit. So when they suggest a title, okay, using this, what we call the title suggestion form, what happens then? When you submit, you get an email. This email basically confirms and acknowledges your submission. Not accepted, yeah? It's just a acknowledgement that yes, thank you very much for submitting this journal. Give us time, we'll evaluate it, and then we'll come back to you on a decision. What's next? After that, what happens is that we need to find out, is this a newly suggested title or not? So this is all goes on behind the back end, right? And the back end of Elsevier. And the next one, you'll see that you look at the Scopus minimum criteria check. Now, I like to simplify things so that people listening, editors listening, they are aware of what's happening in terms of the process. So please bear in mind, there are just 2 stages, okay? Like I say, I want to simplify things so it's easier for me when I say stage 1, stage 2, you can remember, you can recall. So this is stage 1, the minimum criteria. If you do not meet all these criteria, you will not even be considered, okay, for consideration. So here is the first stage 1. So at stage 1, assuming you pass through the stage 1, okay, and then they'll say, okay, very good. We go on to the next stage, stage 2. So in stage 1, if you don't get accepted, you can see it says here, not accepted for review. Now what happens is that you have to come back again, about 2 years later, right? So my advice is always, please make sure that at least you meet the minimum criteria, okay? assuming you pass through stage 1, now you are being considered, okay, for stage 2. So stage 2, what happens here? So you see the word here, title enrichment. So this all goes on behind back end. Okay, essentially it means that assuming you haven't completed the whole host of items that we requested from you, our back end will actually request from you and say, can you submit such and such a particular issue? Okay, and all this, like I say, it goes on back end. I'm not going to dwell too long on this, but I want you to know the flow. After that, what happens? Everything is done, everything is ready. It is then submitted to the Content Selection and Advisory Board. Here, what happens is that it depends on your subject discipline. They will channel it to the right subject chair. Okay, there are about 17 subject Content Selection and Advisory Board subject chairs right now. So depending on your subject discipline, it will be submitted to them. So they will review, okay, if need be, they will get an external opinion if they are not familiar in that particular topic itself, okay? And they'll give you the feedback, whether or not to reject the title and ask you to come back again in X number of years or months, or if they say, very good, minor revisions and you're accepted and you're gonna be indexed in Scopus, okay? So this is the entire workflow from end to end, from the time it starts to the time it ends. And from the time it starts, you are actually given a tracking number. It is just like a postal delivery service, okay? You're given a tracking number, and what happens is that you can track it at any point in time. You'll know where, at which stage your journal is, all right? So you don't have to worry. You don't have to keep calling sender every now and then. You don't even call me. You can just track yourself, okay? That's the beauty of it, right? Next slide, please. So, why is it important to be indexed in Scopus now? If you look at here, I just list down 4 key points. 1, you get international visibility. Now, why is that important? International visibility would actually lead to the next point, which is increasing your citation, both for the individual researcher as well as the journal. Now, I did a check earlier on, and it shows that for Egypt's international collaboration is at 46.6. It's quite good, right? And the field-weighted citation impact is 1.37. What does that mean? That means it's 1 being the world average. 1.37 means it's 37% above the world average, just because you collaborate with other people from other countries. And when I look at it again, I say, hey, for your national collaboration, it's 18.7%. And your field-weighted citation index is 0.79. So this basically supports my background, my thesis, and the fact that if you collaborate externally, chances are more people will cite your paper and they will cite your journal. So this increases the opportunity for collaboration with other researchers, as well as the journal data will be included in all analysis. Why? Because they are based on Scopus data. And for all the other, for example, the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, the QS World University Rankings, they all use Scopus data. So all this helps. Next slide, please. So what exactly is the CSAB looking for before they consider a journal for inclusion in Scopus? So you look at it here, I've listened down, right? Like Sander mentioned earlier, it's based on high quality content, and most importantly, is it original? Okay, do you actually build upon existing literature? Is it well edited? If it is there longevity? Is it focused upon their roots and subject areas? Later on, we'll elaborate a little bit more about that. And does it make significant, measurable, valued contribution to the largest audience and field? Okay, and the target audience and field. And does it have wide international relevance? More people read about it, but also, is it valuable locally? Okay, we'll give some context later on. And then, honest, ethical, and focus on high quality and standards. Now, nowadays, there's a lot of publication ethics issues. So this is one of the key things nowadays. That's the buzzword, okay? Ethics. Next slide, please. So, look at this. Like I mentioned, I want to simplify things. Stage 1, which I mentioned earlier. Now, all the titles must meet all these 5 minimum criteria in order to be considered for Scopus review. It has to be peer reviewed. We'll touch all on this in detail later. Okay, peer reviewed. It needs to have English abstracts, regular publication, Roman script references, and publication ethics statement. So bear in mind, Scopus, as long as you have an English abstract, okay, the full text article can be in your local language. That's the beauty of Scopus. As what Ascender mentioned earlier on, right? We've now, at this point in time, we've something like 40 over different languages in index in Scopus. So as long as the abstracts are in English, it could be in Egyptian, it could be in Korean, it could be in Thai, it could be in any language, as long as you have English abstract. Okay.
And I think it's worth mentioning for the regularity means having a regular schedule, but
Yeah.
it also, we require 2 years of history, which is good to know. So a journal which has very young, 1 year old or not yet 2 years old, you need to wait until you have 2 years of a regular publication schedule, that kind of track record before you can qualify for Scopus.
Yeah, so just to just add on to that, it'll be covered in the next slide actually.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so it's a good point. You can bring it up front here. So minimum 2, okay, and then the Roman scripts will show you a couple of examples later on, okay, and then you make sure you have your publication ethics statement. So here, once you pass through stage 1, that means you have all these minimum criteria. You say, I've got all this, no issues. Then you submit. Now, when you submit, right, then you are considered for stage 2. In stage 2 itself, you are assessed based on these 14 qualitative and quantitative journal selection criteria. So for example, under the main header of journal policy, you have all these sub-criteria here, which is the convincing editorial concept of policy, the type of peer review, diversity of geographic distribution of editors as well as authors. We'll cover all this in detail, but in a snapshot, by looking at this, this should be your, to me, it's like the main thing, okay? Look at this as a summary of sorts. So at any point in time you think, I'm ready to submit, then you look at this particular criteria, think of it like a cheat sheet. Look at this and say, do I meet all this? If yes, in stage 2, do I meet all this? If you meet 4 out of the 5, do you think you want to take a risk? Maybe you just fine tune the rest and then you submit. Why? Why I say that upfront right now? Because when you get rejected, minimum for you time that you can actually resubmit your journal for consideration again, if based on the letter itself, is either from 6 months up to 5 years. So do you want to take a risk, assuming you have to waste 5 years of your life and then come back to resubmit after 5 years only? No, right? So I would strongly recommend that you meet all these criteria first. And at the bottom here, you can see some of the various links for you, okay? You have the information, let's say now at any point in time, the Scopus Content Selection Advisory Board, the CSAB, they meet a couple of times a year. So sometimes they may update certain criteria, okay? So if there's any updates, you can find them here, all right? And you have any questions, let's say only after you've submitted your journal, and you have any questions, there's always one place to look at. Go to the title suggestion at scopus.com. It's only one centralized email, right? Don't come to sender, don't come to me, don't come to anyone. Only that one. Only they would be able to advise you on that. And then if you think you're ready, use this link here, click on the link, it'll bring you to the form, complete the form. The form is self-explanatory for every point. Click on it, it breaks down, there are more sub-menus down there, and then you complete whatever that they ask you to complete. Okay, next slide, please. So what we always believe is check. Check if your journal fulfills all, especially stage 1, all the minimum criteria before you even consider submitting. Next slide, please. So this is the one that we mentioned up front, that we say you need to have 2 years of content Make sure all this, make sure you must have your ISSN number. Okay, that's the very basic. Before you even start a journal, you need to apply for that, get a number, then you make sure you have 2 years. Okay, people ask, why 2 years? Let me ask you this question, and you can maybe answer this yourself in your mind as I ask you. Do you think that it is easy, or do you think that it is difficult to get papers for your journal? I mean, I know that you say, most of you, most if not all of you are from the top journals in Egypt itself. But think back on the time when you first started your journal. Do you think that was easy to get people to submit articles to your journal? I've done this thing for more than 10 years. And I can tell you, majority of the journal editors have feedback to me that is very difficult. It is not easy. I mean, how do you tell people submit to my journal instead of another journal? Why submit to journal A instead of journal G or H or Z? Okay, because you know you need to build up your quality first before someone says, okay, I don't mind taking a chance by submitting my article there, right? So it takes 2 years before you can even think of even building up a decent number of articles in that issue. Then you must have peer review. All this will be elaborated later, yeah? And then you'll see that it needs to have an English website, or at least a website that has both English and Egyptian, okay? English and Thai, English and Korean, or must make sure the basic thing, it needs to have English. Why? Because English is used as like a lingua franca, an international language of science. Then it must have Roman script references. What is Roman script? Later we'll show you some examples to sort of illuminate just that point. Then it must have the publication and ethics statement. And it needs to be regular, okay? So if you say yours is a twice a year, biannual, make sure you have two issues a year, not just one. If you say 4 times a year, make sure you have 4, not just 1, okay? Don't say I'm doing 6 a year, but you only do 2. That's not regular. Then online availability. Nowadays, in our digital age, everybody goes online. At any point in time, if someone asks you a question, you're not sure, what do? You go online, you check, you verify, okay? Next slide, please. So this is an example of what we call references in Roman script. Why do we put it up front here? Because many a time people say, okay, references in Roman script, I sort of understand, but not really understand it. So if you look at these 2 examples here, what do you notice? You notice that they are at least 80% of it is in Roman script. So this one means everything here, it meets the criteria. Now, next slide. Next slide shows you that this thing here, if you look very closely, you may think it looks like English, but when you look closely, it's actually Russian, right? So every article should have at least 80%. This does not meet because it's less than the 80%. Okay, it doesn't meet the criteria. Okay, so hope this explains it. Next slide. Then we move on to the stage 2. So we are very transparent. We actually share with you exactly what's in here. Under journal policy, under the quality of the content, the journal standing, what do people look at? What does a subject chair look at when he says under online availability? Okay, so you see here, it clearly spells out. Okay, next slide, please. And once you pass through stage 1 and in stage 2, then they will decide, do they accept the journal? If yes, the journal will be covered in Scopus from the year of selection moving forward. Okay. If they say no, if they say it's rejected, the journal is not selected for Scopus, but it can be suggested again for review once the embargo period has passed. They will give you an embargo period where they want you to improve whatever comments that they have made. So it could be anywhere from 6 months, like I say, to 5 years. Okay, and the review comments are all there. Make sure you address all these comments. Later, Sandra and I will show you some of the rejection letters to illustrate this. So the decision letter is accompanied by supporting reasons and where relevant advice on improvement. They will tell you, okay? They'll advise you. You want to add on anything, Sandra?
No, I think that's clear.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is just to show you a screenshot. Okay,
دلوقتي هو حتة الريفرنسز 80% منها مش عارفة ولا عمل كده.
Okay, I think someone is unmuted. Is somebody trying to ask a question or?
No,
okay.
Proceed.
If there are questions, please save them for the end. Then we'll answer all the questions at one go. Is that okay? But for now, please mute your line so that the rest can hear us clearly. So for this screenshot itself, you can go to this link and it says that readyforscopus.com, right? So this is actually a very good tool to sort of appreciate your own journal, okay? Self-evaluate your own journal, okay? What we call the self-pre-evaluation tool. So by looking at all the questions here, they will probe you, they will ask you, okay? And then by looking at this itself, you decide for yourself on the percentage. You see on the top right-hand corner, you can see here 63% readiness. So you know that you barely pass this thing, okay? Maybe you might want to push this number up, this percentage higher. By going through all the various criteria, like for example, in this screenshot example, it says the geographical diversity. Then you can see under 12.1 of the editors and authors. And you know that, and you can see it's green, and they give you the examples, all the illustrations there. It explains to you clearly. But if you look at number 13, it didn't really meet all the criteria down there. All right. So overall, when they tabulate everything, you can see that the percentage there is 63% only. No worries, 63% only. So here gives you an idea, a tool. Now here shows you a simplified process, okay? From the time you submit on the top left-hand corner, from the time that you submit, you move on to the next thing that says confirmation and, no, sorry, can you go back?
Sorry, yeah.
No, yeah, when you go on to the next one that says confirmation and tracking number, it gives you, like I mentioned earlier, it is like a tracking tool. They give you the number, it's like a delivery service. At any point in time, you can track to see where, at what stage your journal is at. So it's checking against the minimum criteria. And here, all this that's grayed out here is basically things are in the background, okay? Background checks done by us. Once all the background checks are done, then it's passed on to the CSAB, the Content Selection and Advisory Board. Then after that, they have evaluated and then make their decision, they will then respond to the journal, whether it's going to be accepted or whether it's rejected, or come back again with an embargo period, come back after 2 years, for example. All right. So this whole process will give you an idea of how long that it will take already, right? Things cannot be so fast, like you submit today, you get it. Why? Ask yourself as an editor, each time when you get someone to help review the articles in there, how long does it take before they come back to you? 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? That's just for one article. What about all the other articles? They need to check, and then you need to check, and then your board needs to check before you guys decide, okay, these are the ones that's going to be in your journal, right? So it takes time, background checks and such. Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going into the criteria deep dive, and we're going to tag team here.
Yeah,
okay,
so that was a great high-level overview of the process and the criteria. And what we aim to do in this next section is to go by each of the criteria and to look at them in a bit more detail and hopefully make them a bit more tangibly understandable and in a practical way for you. Okay, this one's mine, and this one is actually very important, what the editorial scope and vision of the journal is. So every journal has to articulate what the vision of the journal is and what the scope is. And some journals might be incredibly broad and other ones might be incredibly specific. But it's very important for a journal to indicate what their scope is and why that's their scope. So to articulate a compelling vision for their journal and why that's the case is important, because many of the other criteria are judged in context of that scope and vision. So the vision that you set out for your journal is like a central point that is going to affect everything else. For example, is your journal an international journal or is it a local journal? Will have bearing on what the expectations are for criteria such as how diverse the editorial board is, how international it is, and how many international authors you have, for example. Peer review is also very important. We only accept peer-reviewed journals, so it's very important that not only the journal be peer-reviewed, but that you demonstrate and indicate what type of peer review that you use, right? So if someone goes to the homepage, they should be able to very easily find the editorial vision and scope of the journal, as well as understand what type of peer review you use. And it doesn't matter if it's open, single, or double blind. But I have heard from some CSAB members that if it's double blind, it's quite a difficult thing to do, to hide the identity both ways. So it might be good to indicate or talk about on your homepage how you approach that process, right? So instead of just saying we are a double-blind peer review, full stop, sometimes it can be more convincing to say this is how we approach doing it, and this is why we chose double-blind. That makes it a bit more believable. So in our experience, it is demonstrating the strong vision of your journal, articulating it in a compelling way, not just having peer review, but being very clear about the type of peer review, why you chose that, and how it works. Can definitely make it all a bit more believable and have people feel more confidence in the journal. Derek?
Yeah, next slide, please. So this is under journal policy still. Now, what is questionable peer review? So something that's very suspicious. So single review by the main editor. We actually came across this particular author who submitted. He is the editor. He's the chief editor. He sits on the editorial board. He's the author. He's one person with many, many functions. So he does his reviews also very, very fast, in 2 weeks or less, and is guaranteed. Okay, but this one is like what we call the me, myself, and I. So if something is questionable, something that's very fast, anything that's 2 weeks or less, it raises certain flags. Okay, so be very mindful. And new journal with rapidly increasing volume. I've actually come across instances whereby it's new journal, but the number of submissions of articles have increased tremendously. Now, why is that? Because we know of certain cases that we've encountered, that we've spoken to, whereby they give us feedback that this journal is what we call a predatory journal. And people need to publish because you may have heard of this term called publish or perish. Now, in order for them to get promoted, they need to publish somewhere. So they find a journal that is willing to accept their article. The article could be reviewed in less than 2 weeks for, say, a magical number of US $350. And they say, okay, everything is done, it's reviewed, we publish your article, job done. Okay, so all these are very questionable. And then you see that volume, that journal starts rising, increases in volume. It raises certain flags, red flags, okay, in the CSAB. Then the case of the author who served as his own referee, here again, these two are connected, the me, myself, and I, okay, whereby he submits the journal, he's the author, he submits, he's also the chief editor, he's also the reviewer, and he says good things, everything is done very fast. So me, myself, and I, all these things are questionable. Okay, under the journal policy. All these things you also need to, as an editor, you need to take note of. Are you willing to take an article in if it's less than, if you've done it within less than 2 weeks? Is it so fast? You verify the facts? You don't verify the facts? Okay, all these things, just take note of. Sender?
So diversity of the editorial board is still with journal policy, and this is graded, you can see, by a number of ranging from no editorial board at all, which is obviously not going to work. But here, regional diversity of the editorial board is not in line with the editorial concept, through to regional diversity of the editorial board is entirely in line with the editorial concept. So my point about the scope and vision is that if the concept of the journal is that it's an international journal, then the expectation will be that the editorial board is internationally diverse, so that it is an international journal which is managed by an international group of people. So in such a situation, they may expect that maybe half or more of the international of the editorial board members would come from other countries, right? While if the journal clearly says, and that's something that's relevant in our region where Derek and I live, if it's, for example, an Asian journal or the Southeast Asian journal of something, then it's much more acceptable if most of the editors are from Southeast Asian countries than if it was international. And even more specific, if it was, for example, the Indonesian Journal of History or Indonesian Journal of Architecture, it's a very local journal with a local topic. It might be relevant to be in Scopus because that local topic might be relevant to an international community of researchers, right? But the topic and vision for the journal is essentially local. So if it's the Indonesian Journal of Architecture, then it would be much more acceptable if all of the editorial board were from Indonesia. That would make more sense. So in that way, the looking at the diversity of the editorial board is not an absolute way of looking at it. It's really in context of the scope and the journal concept of the journal, and that's why that editorial concept and vision is so very important. But so again, they're going to look, and you're going to want them to grade that the diversity of the editorial board is entirely in line with the editorial concept. So if it's, for example, a journal that is representative of the Middle East, they may expect that there are different editorial board members from different countries in the Middle East.
Can I
also, in some cases, editorial board members may be, they might not be like people who are, sometimes you have like managing editors who are not necessarily active in the field. And sometimes you have people who might have been the founder of the journal and may have passed away. So in some cases you have people on there for honorary reasons to honor their contribution. And in some cases, like, people have actually passed away, and that's actually okay. We understand that. So that's not a big problem. But all the editorial board members, other than those cases, they should all know that they are on the editorial board. So there have been cases of submissions where the CSAB member looked at the submission and said, wow, look at this editorial board. It's very diverse. These are quite, prominent people in the field. It looks good. I think I'll write one of them an email and have a conversation with them. And it turns out that the editor board member said, well, I didn't know that I was on the editorial board of the journal, which is obviously suspicious, right? So some journals are putting board members on a list without the board members knowing that they're there, which is, I don't think it's a good practice. And in many cases that will be discovered and will be problematic for this and some other criteria. Derek, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No. Good, thanks. Right, here we talk about the diversity of authors and reviewers. So basically, the diversity in geographic distribution of authors and reviewers is generally required. Again, it needs to reflect what is the type of journal it is. And everything boils down to this, okay? You look at the word aims and scope. Aims and scope is being repeated over and over and over again. Why? Because it's actually very, very important, okay? So the thing is, whatever is mentioned in the aims and scope, it needs to be carried throughout. Throughout, meaning to say, with regards to the editors, the editorial board itself, and the authors, as well as the reviewers, right? So you can see here, regional diversity of authors is not in line, it's partly in line, or entirely in line. So basically it's a grading scale, okay, from the top to the bottom here. Is it good? Is it not good? If it's in line with the aims and scope, if the aims and scope says it's only meant for the Southeast Asian region, Southeast Asia, and the diversity of authors reflects that, like what Sandra mentioned earlier on, it's fine, no issue, okay? But you say international journal of this and whatever, and the reviewers and the authors does not reflect that, they're all from, say, the Middle East or all from Egypt only, then it's not acceptable, okay? That's what it means. So next slide.
Sorry, my PowerPoint, I use Office 365, and sometimes when I try to change the slide, it's, there we are, abstracts. Abstracts are incredibly important. So Scopus is an abstract and citation database. It does not have the full text in Scopus, right? So the abstract quality of the abstract is very important for Scopus, because people need to go and look at the title and the abstract and understand roughly what this article is about. It is very important for journals which are non-English journals, who then go and create English abstracts, that the abstracts be really well written, properly, you know, English with good grammar. We've seen some cases of people using Google Translate to translate local language into English, and that doesn't work. It makes for a very funny reading abstract. The abstract should also be relatively comprehensive. So what we see also is sometimes an abstract is more like a summary. It just says this article examines the degree to which not wearing a mask might raise the chances of catching COVID-19 or something like that, right? But it should actually mention not only that introduction, but also the method, the results, and the conclusion. So it should represent comprehensively the article, which is how a good abstract is written. The grading is going from no abstract at all to an abstract which is not in English, which won't be accepted, to the abstract being in English but being either unclear or not well written, to what we're aiming for here is abstract is in English, it's very clear and very detailed. So this is really something that you have under your own control, because you can look at the quality of the abstract there, and if the actual content of the article and the science is good, then you know, creating the well-written English abstract should be the least of your worries, really. So it's a feasible thing, but you need to keep an eye on it. Derek, you're muted.
Whoops, sorry. Yeah, we talk about the content of the papers. So we look at the quality of and conformity with stated aims. You notice that again, the stated aims and scope, very, very important. Whatever you mention in your aims and scope, it needs to be carried through throughout, okay, throughout the entire journal, throughout the entire articles. So the grades here are from extremely poor to extremely good. So ask yourself these questions all before you even decide, you know, but first and foremost, decide on your aims and scope. Then you talk about all the various content, the actual content. Is it readable? Okay, and when we say readable, first and foremost, the actual contents itself. Next, like what Sandra mentioned, don't get edited articles from Google Translate, okay? Because it's going to read very funny. If it doesn't read well, it's a scientific journal, and it doesn't read well in the articles, how does it become a scientific journal in the first place, right? And the quality of sample articles that's being assessed, okay, is assessed on two things, two criteria here. Language, okay, it should be very clear, short, sharp, and concise. And layout and format of text and figures, okay? Again, consistency, okay? It's all about consistency throughout your entire journal, okay? Then comes the grading. You grade it whether is it going to be extremely poor or extremely good. That decides on the content itself. Or over and above that, make sure your methods are correct for the right article that you're talking about. As well, you do your checks on all these various articles. Okay, are the figures all correct? Are the tests correct? Okay, is it reproducible? Things like that. All right, that constitutes the content, the quality of content. Okay, Sandra.
So Derek, how many articles do they look at?
How many what?
How many actual articles do they look at to judge the content of the papers?
So no, okay, your submission to Scopus itself, and you need to submit 10 articles at this point in time. All right. However, that doesn't mean that you only be based on this 10. The CSAB has they have the prerogative to reach out to you and say, look, I'm not 100% convinced. Can I also see other articles within the journal? Okay. Over and above that, they may also go to your website, okay, your homepage itself. They can click. Hopefully, everything is listed on your website, and then they don't need to ask you. They can click on all the articles that they want to read. Okay, just bear that in mind.
So figures and charts. Derek mentioned it already in the previous slide, and our experience has been that some journals which have submitted, despite being relatively good quality in terms of the actual content, that the problem was with the figures, that you would look at the figure, and even though what it represents is good and sound in terms of the research, the figure itself might be blurry, the labels might be unreadable, to the point that you think, well, I'm not wearing my glasses, but then you put your glasses on and you still can't read the figure. And that's a shame, especially if the underlying work is good, but the figure is not good. Then in the actual review process, the journal or reviewer should be asking the author to improve those figures to be higher quality. So again, they just need to be good quality, readable, good labels, and so forth. So it's really a shame if the journal is otherwise good, but includes graphics and figures which are not good quality.
Here we look at the academic contribution to the field. So what does that mean? It's still part of the quality of content. So at any point in time, let's look on the top right here, you can see we're still on the main topic on quality of content. Now, does this academic, does it contribute academically to the field? Okay. Does this title make a unique contribution to existing literature? These are questions that are being posed to you. Is it good science? Is it good scholarship? Merely a publication outlet for one faculty? We know of a, I won't mention the institution name. We know of an institution whereby they have actually set up, okay, a journal, and basically, like I mentioned previously, because they want to get promotion, and one of the criteria of the country, of the region itself, is that you need to publish, okay, before you are even considered for tenure, for promotion, or to move on to the next year itself. So because we are being pressurized, the faculty set up this thing, this publication itself, and essentially anybody that submits the journal, the articles there into that journal, they will be accepted 100%. We know of that. So is it a publication outlet for one faculty? These are questions that you need to honestly ask yourself. Okay, and publishing all or most submissions and acceptance rate. So if you recall, I started the presentation by showing you the chart itself that shows the acceptance rate. So you know that the world average is about 48%. You know that for Egypt is about 46%. Okay, 42.6%, sorry, right? So what is the acceptance rate for your journal? We've spoken to some editors and they say, look, oh, mine is very high. You know, it's like 70% acceptance rate, 80% acceptance rate. Then that's the question. The next question is, do you maintain a certain quality if you're accepting every other article? You mean to tell me that every article, every author that submits has such very high quality? Okay, these are questions to be posed to you to answer yourself. And then you decide for yourself. You are the experts in your own field. So you would know whether or not it has met the expectation, it has met the academic standard for that particular field. Okay. Sunda?
You, all right, just let me get PowerPoint too. So when we're looking at journal standing, one factor here that's an important one is the citedness of the journal. So you might ask, how can the journal be cited, or how can you look at citations if the journal's not in Scopus yet? And the answer is that journals which are already indexed in Scopus can cite journals which are not yet indexed in Scopus. And you can check that in Scopus using an advanced search. There's a couple ways you can do it, but I use the operator REF, which is searching in the references. And then you can search for the journal title using a phrased search. And if you have different variants of the title, like an English name and a non-English name, or different abbreviations, then you could build a search string with OR to account for that. But ultimately, the more citations that the journal has from papers which are indexed in Scopus, then that's going to be a stronger, let's say, quantitative, objective argument. I don't know if argument is the right word, but evidence to suggest that the journal is impactful, right? So journals which are very highly cited by papers in Scopus, it's hard for us not to accept them unless there's a fundamental problem with the quality, or it's predatory or whatever. So having citations really helps, but it's only one of the criteria. And many times people ask me, how many citations do we need? And I said, well, there's no fixed number, and it depends on the field. So they will compare the citedness of your journal to other journals in a similar field. Therefore, the expectations of a social sciences journal will be much different than a medical or engineering title. Again, people say, well, what does it mean to be poorly cited? I would say, well, not having any citations at all, or having one or two citations, would definitely be, not very high, right? So that would not be too positive. But it's more difficult to say what's very highly cited. I would say if you have several hundred citations, that is a significant amount of citations. But again, you would have to compare yourself to other titles in a similar field. The expectations are a little bit different, where this is a journal which is published by the Central Bank of Indonesia, Bank Indonesia. And they publish this journal, which is about economics and monetary policy. And they asked my help before submitting. And, we went through this whole exercise of looking at all the criteria that we looked at today and seeing to what degree they meet these criteria. And in terms of citedness, at the time, which was still, I think, 3 months before their submission, we looked together in Scopus and find that they had 101 documents in Scopus which were citing their journal. 101 is a significant number in my view. And also we saw that those papers were not only from Indonesia, but also some of the authors were affiliated to other countries. So that suggests that the impact of the journal is not just within the country, but there's some international impact there. So my advice to them at the time was, I think in terms of citations, it was quite positive. And you can do this yourself. If you just go into Scopus and you go to the advanced search, you use the operator REF, R-E-F, that means you're searching in the references. Use a phrased search and search for the title of your journal. Derek.
Okay, so under editors, and this is under the journal standing. If you look at the top right-hand corner, and you can see that we give you a tip at the bottom here. Tip, link the editor names on your journal homepage to Scopus author profile page. Now, I'm not sure whether you're aware, but every author, okay, would have an author ID. It is like your identity card number, all right? So that is actually very important, bear that in mind. So as an editor itself, the reputation of the editor-in-chief and his or her deputy or associate is actually very, very important, okay? You may say it's very difficult to assess, but a good editor may not have a high academic profile. Some are actually professional editorial managers, editor managers, okay? Some are just called managers. So how do you assess? Okay, again, it's based on the quality of your journal, the quality of the person. If this person has managed before, and yet this person is actually managing this journal, and the quality of journal has been increasing over the years, and it's become thicker in terms of volume, all these are various key things. Also, they look at the affiliations, whatever affiliations and up-to-date scholarly output, and also whether this person is active or not. Some people are editors or chief editors in name only. They've been there for many, many years, 20, 30 years, okay? But they're not doing anything. The last time they published was 15 years ago. They're not current, they're not up to date. They essentially are there in name. They get their editorial board or they get other people to sort of run the journal. So they don't place a lot of quality or QC, quality control for that. Okay, so their standing, their grading is kind of poor. Okay, again, the grades is between poor, very poor, and very good standing. And we also check, okay, in terms of the background checks that we do, we'll check, we'll key in the name, but I mentioned here, if you look at the tip, the bottom left-hand corner, the tips on the linking of the editor names, by going into Scopus, you can check on the person, the author, the editor, and you can find out all about the person. You can drill down into details like in terms of how they collaborate with people, in terms of the quality, the number of citations, so on and so forth. So they really look at the reputation of the editor-in-chief. Okay, Sandra?
Publishing regularity is something that we already touched upon. And basically regularity means that you have consistency and that you consistently publish according to the schedule that you've set out for yourself. So if you said that it's a journal which publishes twice a year, then it should be twice a year. And they're going to look at how many issues have been late, have been delayed. It's okay to increase the number of issues. So if you said, well, we've done 2 per year, but we're receiving many more good submissions, so we want to go from 2 to 4, that's perfectly fine. But once you go to 4, you should not fall back to 2 because it needs to be regular. So if it builds up, it's okay, but it should not be 2, 2, 2, 4, 4, 2, 2, 4, because that would show that you're having trouble to maintain doing 4 issues per year. So it probably would have been better to stick to 2 issues and maximize the quality over the quantity. So that's what we mean by publishing regularity, looking at delays and whether you're able to execute the schedule that you've set out for yourself. Oh, again.
Okay, I like this one. So online availability, this one is key. Okay, you see there are 3 main points here. The content, is it available online? English language homepage, and the quality of the journal homepage. So first one, the content, is it available online? Most, if not all, journals nowadays actually have their journals available online. Most, if not all. Okay, some are free. Some are, they need password to sort of access, okay? But it doesn't make a difference. People have asked us, does it make a difference if it's free access, or does it must have a password access? Is password restricted? You know, it doesn't make a difference, right? Then comes to the English language homepage. Like I mentioned previously, as long as you have the gist of it in English, the abstracts needs to be in English, the rest of it could be in your local language. But for the online availability part of it, from our experience itself and to our knowledge, we've been told that, you know, it's good to have whatever you have in your local language, have it translated in English. So you have a button, okay, that basically says in English or in your local language, so that people can look through, and it needs to be the same. So there's no confusion, everything is very clear. Okay, the direct translation, if you will. Then comes the quality of the journal homepage. Sometime back in the very early years, about 8 to 10 years ago, we noticed there were some journal homepages that look more like a supermarket advertisement. Okay, with flashing, with starburst and flashing and all that stuff. They were not very professional. They're not very scientific. But over the years, we've been doing this for so many years. We've been advising people, and over the years, it has improved. Thank God for that. So the quality of the homepage plays a very important part. Does it look professional? Is it very clear to pick out things that I want to pick out? Okay, are the aims and scope stated very clearly? Can I find the EISSN number? Can I find out who the editorial board members are? Can I click on their links? If I click on them, does it bring me to whoever this person is? Okay, does it have a publication and ethics malpractice statement, what we call PAMS? Okay, all those various things are very important. So the three main headings here: the content, is it available online? Does it have an English language button, or is majority of it is in English, and then you have some in your local language? Or in the quality, is it good? Is it not good? Okay, you need to look at it and say, is it professional? Is it easily navigatable? If you can navigate this thing, or easy navigation, that means on the top bar, the sidebars, by clicking, it brings you to whatever that they want, then it's a good quality. If not, if it's everywhere and it's not clear, then it's not a good quality homepage. Next slide, please, Sandra. So here is under PAMS, P-E-M-S, Publication Ethics and Malpractice Statement. Nowadays, this is mandatory, means it must be in there. Before you submit your journal, make sure you have this statement. Okay, if you look at this, allow me to read out this particular statement because it's very important. PAMS need to be comprehensive, and it needs to comprehensively describe the scope of responsibilities and rights of the editor, the authors, and reviewers, as well as include information about consequences in case misconduct takes place. So it needs to spell out very clearly, right? And I've given you a link here, publicationethics.org. This is under COPE, okay? The Committee of Publication Ethics. Go there, there are very good examples there. Go there, take a look at it, and then use those things. When I say use those information there, I mean to use it and then make sure that you customize it according to your journal. Okay, we've come across cases whereby they go in there. There's some editors who go into the publication ethics.org site, and then they just copy wholesale whatever is in there. So assuming they copy the PAMS statement, the publication ethics and malpractice statement for an engineering journal, and they just copy wholesale for a medical journal. Completely different. Okay, don't do that. Customize it to your journal, to your subject discipline, right? Sandra?
The PDFs of the papers are important, and even though that's not written into the formal criteria, it's something that over the years I've noticed that is important. So sometimes when you go to the webpage of a journal, you can see the HTML article, right? And it will have a certain title and author names and an abstract, and then you click through to the PDF, and it's a different title, different abstract, or it looks completely different, or there's differences. That's not good. So the PDF really needs to be the same as the HTML page, and the front page ideally should include clearly indicated what the journal name is, the volume, issues, page numbers, the authors of the paper, clearly linked to the affiliations. I noticed that it is quite positively accepted if the date of that the paper has been received, reviewed and accepted, because this kind of demonstrates the transparency of the peer review process. So the consistency of the PDF with the information that's on the homepage is important, as well as the quality of that front page when you open the PDF. Sometimes when that's very bad quality, it does not inspire confidence, even if other aspects of the journal are okay. And these are really things which can be overcome with a bit, you know, more technical. We have a whole section here on reevaluation, which we don't have time for, but I'll share the slides. The high-level version of it is journals need to not only be good when they get into Scopus, they need to keep the quality high. And if the quality declines, or if they start to engage in predatory practices, they will be reevaluated and possibly discontinued from Scopus. So shall we move to the, see if there are questions, because we've been talking a long time.
Mr. Sander, hi, I'm Rabab Rashwan. Thank you so much for you and Mr. Sander and Mr. Derek. It's extremely useful session and very, we did not use for this kind of a session that bringing us into details of what you are doing, not only the interface that we are seeing as editors and people are working in publishing. I just want to leave the floor to, we have some questions dropped on the chat and we have a hand raised. So may I suggest that please Dr. Nagwa start and then Dr. Hiba Nassar, followed by Dr. Ahmed and then Dr. Niveen. Dr. Nagwa, could you please go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you very much for this amazing session. It was highly informative and illustrative. I just would like to have more info about the Roman references. I didn't understand that part. And when you said 80%, the figure, it was also not clear. So I appreciate more elaboration. Thank you.
Sure. So one of the criteria is that the references of articles which are not in English, right? So we accept journals which are not in English, but the title must be in English and the references must be in English, in Roman script, right? The reason for this is because Scopus is a citation database. So every reference gets linked to the article which it cites. So that's called citation linking. And citation linking is only possible if it's in Roman script. Apparently, and I only learned this a couple weeks ago, the criteria is actually that 80% of the references need to be Roman script. So if you had 20% of the references in the journal were Arabic and 80% were in English, then that would be acceptable. So in the example here, I think you see a couple of, no, I think most of, actually you see a couple of things which are not Roman script, but it's acceptable. While the example here, you see that all of it is in Cyrillic, which is not Roman script, so this would not meet that criteria. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you mean most of them should be within the English, not within other languages that's not present on the Scopus database?
It should be okay. I think that, so Roman script is a type of alphabet, right? So the English alphabet, the type of characters that we have, there are a number of different languages that use Roman script. It's not only English, also Dutch and German and so forth, we use Roman script. But there's many languages which don't use Roman script, like Thai and Russian. It's a completely different alphabet. So it doesn't have to be in English, but it needs to be Roman script.
Okay, clear. Thank you so much.
Dr. Hiba Nassar, please. Dr. Hiba?
Am I unmuted now? Am I muted?
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for this session. I mean, it was really very informative. And thank you, Ala, for all your efforts you are doing with us, with all the journals here in Egypt now. I have two questions. One regarding the editorial board and the associate editorial board. My associate editorial board is very active with me in desk reviews, in also in peer reviews, sometimes in peer reviews, not always, but in desk reviews at least. My editorial board, I know most of them personally because
you dropped out.
It's on the main. I mean, this journal might. So they are very. They are informed about the journal. We inform them about each process, and many of them we meet. Many of them we meet in conferences, not we meet through meetings or so special meetings for the journal. We meet in. Some of them also answer us, but this is all, and they don't want to leave us. They know us, they know the journal, but they are not engaged in the way the associate board is engaged. So it's this, but they are informed about the process of what we do regarding the journal. So I think this is enough because you are talking about editorial. I think also I'm sure that when you send them an email, they will answer that they know us. So I think this is enough for the editorial because most of them are very famous and most of them told us, please let us be informed, but we cannot do more than that. I'm talking about the editorial board, not the associate editorial board. And they are very, very well informed, as I told you, in contact with us and all that. So this is enough, I think. Yeah, this is the first question because you were talking about the editorial board. The second is the early side.
Let's start with the first. Perhaps we could do one at a time. So is your question whether the structure is
okay or no?
Yeah. Derek, have you come across this structure before?
Have I come across the structure? What do you mean?
I'm asking Derek, my colleague.
All right. So the typical one is just you have a chief editor or main editor. Then sometimes we have those that have a manager, okay? Or you have those that have an editorial board with a chief editor on top there. So these are the typical structure, the main structure, because you can have many associate editors, but sometimes the key people that are perpetually there, like if I think you dropped off for a while, but I think I can infer from what you mentioned that you actually have a sort of like a board with key people in there, but some people, the associate editors are the ones that are reluctant to leave, something like that. Am I right?
No, she said
they are doing desk review for us.
Desk reviews for y'all.
Yeah, only desk review, but the peer review are from the reviewers. I mean, other group.
Yeah, but actually, your main questions about the board itself, about the structure, right?
Yeah.
Of the editors. Yeah. So we are more focused on the editors. If you look at what we've actually just presented in the slides, move to the slide that says on the editors, the editorial board itself. I think it sort of illustrates what we mentioned. Those are the
I think her point is that she has associate editors and normal editors, and that their roles are a little bit different. So that the associate
they have editorial board, key persons, well informed, but they don't want to be engaged in desk reviews and such things. But an associate board, which is also internal, and I mean very well, good people, yeah, but a little bit younger. And those many of them are engaged in desk reviews with us.
Actually,
so
the key
I believe that this is the editorial board. You said sometimes you write to the board and they don't know anything about the journal. No, our editorial board, no. I mean, each member knows about the journal, but it's not
that's great. I've heard some CSAB members say that they thought it was very good if on the journal homepage and they had the list of their editorial board, if they wrote some text to explain the concept and how it works. For example, if they have a very diverse board in different countries, if they indicate how often they meet and how they make decisions, and if they meet virtually or if they meet in person. And I think that perhaps if you have a particular setup with differences in role, maybe explaining that, your vision for how that works and why that's a good thing, because you sound very confident that it works for you. You could actually think about articulating that on the homepage.
Okay.
Just to
Okay.
add on.
Do I have time for a second question or no?
Sure.
Ola. I mean, if other people want to ask, I mean, no problem.
Yeah, 6 other people,
Yes,
Dr.
I'm
Hiba.
there. I'm there. Yes.
Okay, then let them ask first. If there is still time, I will go. Okay?
Okay.
Bye. So you are giving now the speech to whom?
You can go on.
I can go on, Tab. Okay, that's great. I have, I mean, also a problem in the admission, because we have now large admission of people, of articles, and we have a good rejection rate, actually between 30 and 40. But still, we have a large admission, and it goes through the system of peer review. And because we only are quarterly, so we cannot publish those which are accepted, all those which are accepted. So we have an early site also. And in this early site, there is around 30 to 40 articles. So is this a problem? We are a quarterly journal, yeah, with 5 articles each for 3 months. And we have a rejection rate between 30 and 40%. And still, we have an early site on the computer with around 30 articles.
I'm not sure I understand the question. So you...
Despite the fact that our rejection rate is 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
And we have a quarterly a quarterly journal, which means that we have around 20 articles published. We have still, I mean, a list of acceptance. And these are published on an early site on the publisher site. In addition to the 20 which are published in the journals, which is every 3 months coming out.
السؤال معلش.
السؤال is this a problem? We have a rejection rate of 30 to 40, which is the normal rejection rate that you are asking for. We have a quarterly journal with 5 articles every 3 months. And still we have a row. So these are a row of accepted articles. And these are published in the early site. Early site is a site on the computer.
So is that a preprint, or is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, it's like a preprint.
Okay, I don't think there's a problem with preprints.
What?
I don't think there's a problem with preprints, no.
Okay, because this is around 30 to 40 articles always. Okay. With a rejection rate of 30 to 40. I mean, our rejection rate is also low. It's not bad, but still we have, because we have a high demand, we have still papers on the early side.
Okay, to my knowledge, there's no problem with preprints. So if you have early versions that are available somewhere, that's okay also.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Can we go to Dr.
complicated questions, yeah, Ola.
لا, it's okay, دكتورة. Can we go to Dr. Ahmed Ibrahim?
Okay.
Dr. Ahmed. Okay, Dr. Niveen Ali.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the interesting presentation. It was really very organized, informative. I have a very fast question. Is the number of articles is something to be considered in the evaluation? And if it is, what is a reasonable number should each issue contain?
That's a good question. I think it's the consistency that's important. So that if you look at the number of issues that you have per year and how many articles are there, that you're consistent there and that you uphold the right level of quality. So if you had to choose between, if you start to publish, say, a higher number of papers, does that mean that some of those papers are lower quality? And that may become a problem. So I think that the quality is more important than the quantity, but whatever quantity you choose should be consistent. So it should not change a lot over time. But I really don't know what the right number is. I think it differs a little bit per field in terms of how many papers and issues different journals have. So I don't know what the norm is for your field. I'd ask if Derek has any thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, just to add on to what Sander mentioned, there is no magical number. It's all subject to your field, your discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But quality is of utmost importance. And then just bear in mind, I know we've been repeating this multiple times, but the aims and scope, everything needs to conform to your aims and scope. As long as you have that right, everything else should fall in line for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope that helps. I mean, sometimes, it's hard for us to give us a specific number, and I don't think there is a number that can be given, but it's important that the quality be as high as possible and that you be as consistent as possible in terms of how much you publish. And then I guess part of the challenge for you will be looking at how much is being submitted to you, how much of that is the right quality, and then coming up with a publication schedule where you can be consistent in delivering that quality. So that's very hard to say from a distance.
So the priority is always for quality, regardless the number. So we should put in our aim just the quality of the articles. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Sameh or Dr. Iman Haggad. Dr. Yahya, how long do we have time more?
Yes, Dr. Ola. Yes, Madam Ola.
Sander and Derek.
I just want to ask one question.
Yes.
I'm the Yes.
Is it okay with you, Sander?
I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Advanced Pharmacy Research, and we are achieving the criteria for the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, except for one thing, which is that we are a journal concerning the pharmaceutical sciences with its fields. Fields of pharmacology, pharmaceutics, phytochemistry, molecular biology, technology, and so on. And the point that we are missing to take the 7 score, we have 6 score because of this. And the suggestions is to make like sessions, like make the journal sessions so that we approve. To approve the specialty thing. But actually, I'm not convinced to make the journal specific, like for pharmacology or specific for pharmaceutics or so, because I'm concerning with the multidisciplinary concept, and we are in general just pharmaceutical sciences, and we are not accept papers from dentistry or medicine or agriculture or so. We are just concerning with pharmaceutical sciences. We have international board, we have a single peer review. We are so prompted in for releasing the issues in its time. So we are having all the criteria required. So is this will be an obstacle for Scopus evaluation or acceptance? This is my question, and thank you very much. Sorry that I didn't thank you in the beginning for valuable, interesting workshop.
Okay, thank you very much for the compliments and for the good question. May I ask, is the vision and scope of the journal, what is it articulated as? Like, have you said that it?
Yeah, it is in the journal issue. Like we have the aim of the scope, aim and the scopes. The journal publishes genuine work based on the excellent scientific quality and concerning all research fields of the pharmaceutical sciences.
Okay.
Journal pharmacy research.
Yeah.
Yes, and we are citing what are the fields. It is in the journal info. It is in the aims and the scope. It is obvious in the homepage journal.
Okay, that sounds very positive and quite specific that you're indicating that. So I haven't had a great look, but I think the important part is to articulate and explain clearly what the scope of the vision and of the journal is. And if you're indicating that it's these fields and that you focus on the highest quality, that sounds like a very good start. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is not going to be an obstacle. Great. Okay.
What were you afraid was an obstacle?
Because the Egyptian Knowledge Bank actually, like the final mark is 7 out of 7, and I got 6 out of 7 because this point that they said this journal is not a specialist for, say, pharmacology or pharmaceuticals,
I understand.
or molecular design, and actually all these fields are concerning the pharmaceutical sciences, which I am obviously putting it in the aim and scopes of the journal website.
Yeah, so I think Scopus wants you to indicate what fields you cover, and if you can indicate why is it that you include these fields, and if you say, well, these are all fields which are related to pharmacology, and the reason that we focus on them is A, B, and C, then that shows, clear rationale why you've chosen for this particular scope, and that's not a problem. I think it's a problem if it's unclear what your scope is, or if a journal has let's say a broad scope and it does not explain why it has a broad scope. That is quite often a problem.
Okay, let me add that my scope was more wide, and then I had a personal one-to-one meeting with Dr. Jeffrey Robbins from Springer Nature, and actually he advised me to make the fields very clear, and all the things that he reported for my journal, I actually I did it all. And actually, I first applied for Scopus for Elsevier, but I didn't have the chance to go on because of there was like financial problem, but I hope it's gonna be solved with the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, inshallah.
Okay.
Okay. Can I mention something, please?
Yeah.
Doctor, the evaluation, it is not. First of all, the evaluation is not related to. The criteria of the evaluation is not related to EKB. We are only the technical part using our tool for the evaluation. This is number one. Number two, the evaluation criteria, it relates to the different committees within the promotional committees. So this has nothing to do with the indexation for Scopus.
Okay. I know, Madam Ola, but the problem is because I got 6 out of 7, I wasn't even included. The name of the journal wasn't included in this webinar, which like
no. The criteria for selection for this was based on the number of articles, the publication, few criteria. And this is not the only session that will be held. We will be having lots of other sessions. So don't worry about it.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for the great question. I hope that our answer was somewhat informative.
It was very informative. Thank you, Mr. Sander. Thank you, Mr. Derek. And we hope to see you always in the like in valuable workshops, other workshops like these. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Can I just add one thing before you go?
Oh, sure.
So two things, right? So one is the cover letter, like what Sander mentioned. Spell it out clearly. Number two, go to the readyforscopus.com to do your own self-evaluation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any last questions?
Yes, please, if you would allow me. I'm Professor Hisham El-Barmelgi. I'm representative of Journal of Urban Research, published by Cairo University. I have a question, please.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Yes, hello. I have a lot of papers published in my journal in Arabic language. That means that most of the citation is in Arabic. Do I have to translate all the references to the Roman language before submitting to Elsevier? Although that the main language of the paper is in Arabic. Thank you.
Derek, I've been talking too much. Could you get this one?
Okay, so what you need to do is the abstracts needs to be in English. Your full text article can remain in Arabic, but your
titles and abstract has been translated already.
No, the titles is in English, the abstracts in English, the Roman references.
No Roman references.
Yeah,
references
so maybe so you need to get the references done, Roman script. So these three things are key for you actually. And especially coming from Cairo University, I think it's the largest university in Egypt, and one of the better known journals, I believe, right? So all the more it should be considered, as in if it's a very valuable input, you should actually get the thing translated and share it with the world.
Yes, but it will be a hell of a lot of work. We will start doing it. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question, please. Hello?
Hello, yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
Hello. Yes, I ask about diversity in editorial board. Does this mean editorial board as executive board or the advisory? As we commonly meet journals mixing between executive board and advisory board. How can we judge their diversity in spite of this confusion in writing names of editors through very long list of names, either in print copy or the website of the journal?
How big is your editorial board?
Sorry?
How many people are on your board?
We cannot judge even these names, either editorial board, executive or advisory. 20, 30 names.
It's
without affiliations, without separations.
Can you elaborate, as in you cannot judge? What do you mean by you cannot judge? Because if you are you the chief editor of your journal?
No, working in the evaluation of journals.
Okay, but okay, maybe for starters, you need to sort of clarify, as in like who is in the editorial board. Find out exactly their roles. If you need help in that, what you can do is that in our presentation slides, there's a link down there to the Researcher Academy and so on and so forth, the Library Connect, so on and so forth. Click on those links. It sort of guides you as to how to organize your editorial board. How do you get the definitions, the roles and responsibilities of the board members? So from there, it will help you sort of crystallize who these people are, what they actually do, where they are from. I don't know if that's helpful, whether it's helpful for you.
So ma'am, are you representing a particular journal, or are you asking generally?
No, general.
Okay, so you're asking how to evaluate editorial boards, and is your comment that sometimes it's hard to identify who is on the board?
Yes.
Okay.
When we talk here about diversity in editorial board, we just mean the executive board or even the advisory.
I think that perhaps both, but I think that the problem is if they're not indicating very clearly who's on the board, then it's going to be a problem, right? So I think that goes back to the part where it's very important that the website, the homepage of the journal, very clearly indicates this is our editorial board. If they have two boards, executive and another one, that it clearly be indicated this is the executive editorial board that does the actual management of the journal, and this is an advisory board, and indicates what the difference is between the groups and who is in those two different groups. If that's not the case, and it's very hard to figure out who the board is and what the difference is between an executive and an advisory board, then probably from the Scopus point of view, that will not be looked at very positively. If it is indicated clearly, then they're going to look at, again, the aim and scope of the journal. And if it's an international journal, then they will expect that a significant number of the people on the executive board and the advisory board are from other countries, so that it's an international journal that gets inputs from people from different countries. If it is a local journal of one country, perhaps an Egyptian journal, then it will be much more acceptable for the majority of editors to be, the majority of the board to be from Egypt. If it's very hard to figure out who is on the board, then it's very hard to make that judgment, which is a different problem. That's more about the quality of the information.
Okay, thank you.
Can
I think we need to thank our presenters because it's already, if I'm correct, it's already past 6 p.m. in their time zone. So if anyone has any final question, you can just write it in the chat box, and we will follow up with you maybe by email. But for now, I think we need to thank Mr. Sander and Mr. Derek. Thank them very much for their time. It's been a pleasure having them, and it was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Yahya. Can I say just one point, please? And thank you so much for the presenters. It was really a beneficial presentation, and I hope that we continue the sessions and we can repeat this session again, because I think that the attendees, not all the attendees whom invited are there. Just one thing that I want to say it in Arabic for the journals, if you don't mind. بصوا يا جماعة، احنا دلوقتي الاي بي والبحث العلمي والتعليم العالي، احنا بنحاول ان احنا نساعد المجلات انها الاول تبقى فيزيبل عن طريق الطول. دلوقتي it's high time للاندكسيشن. الثيم بتاعنا السنة دي والسنة اللي جاية ان شاء الله لو ربنا احيانا هو الاندكسيشن. فاحنا هنعمل سيشنز كتيرة جدا بالتعاون مع Elsevier، وإن شاء الله هيكون في اوفيس مخصوص للأسئلة والمساعدة، وهنساعد كمان في التقديم علشان indexation of our journal is something very important. And I'm just saying that indexation our journals is something very, very important for us. And as you mentioned in your presentation that the percentage of the accepted journals from the presenting journals is comparative high, but the number of the journals who are trying to be indexed are very limited. It's only because we don't have the culture and we don't have the inertia to start and go for this indexation solution. So I think that there will be more presentation of journals for indexation, and hope that we succeed to have more indexed journals. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was really very beneficial for all of us. Thank you, Dr. Yahya, for your support, and for Elsevier, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the attendees.
Thank you, and we will be sharing the slides and the recording with you, Madam Wala. So if you wish to disseminate it to all attendees, you are more than welcome to.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Derek and Sander.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Everyone, it was nice to meet you. Please take care. And yeah, we wish you well until the next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.